Jonah Tong showcased a new cutter, and Carson Benge had a big day. A lot to discuss about some of the Mets' top prospects on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're listening to Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. On the show today, we're going to talk about Jonah Tong and a new cutter. In the first segment, I'll go through how he used that cutter in his spring debut on Wednesday. Then in the second segment, I want to talk about how it can really help transform his arsenal and what I project his season to look like in 2026. Then in the final segment, we got to talk about Carson Benge, a 3-for-3 day, showing the type of barrel control that makes him one of the top prospects in all of baseball. Before we get to any of that, though, I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I've covered the New York Mets on this show since the 2019 season. This is the #1 daily podcast on the New York Mets. Want to find some of my written work? You can do so over at justbaseball.com, where I work as the editor-in-chief. Now, we got a chance to watch Jonah Tong make a start on Wednesday. It was a lot of fun seeing him go out there and compete in a way a little bit differently than we might have expected, because when you watch Jonah Tong in the past, everything is predicated on his fastball, but last year we saw that changeup really develop into a really solid pitch. We also know of the curveball that he has, 12-6 breaker that has the ability to be a really good strikeout pitch, but not always the best pitch to land in zone. What we've been wondering is what would be that fourth pitch. He worked on a slider a bit last year, but what is the pitch that he can throw in zone where if something's not working, he has a wrinkle? And now we know what that wrinkle very well could be. It's a cutter. And this cutter, Jonah Tong threw it about 40% of the time. He threw 18 cutters out of 50 pitches. So he really went to the well on this pitch. And this is exactly what Jonah Tong has to do. And this is why this start wasn't about Jonah Tong trying to turn heads and make the big league roster on opening day, because it's already been laid out pretty clearly that he's not expected to make this team. He still needs to develop more in Syracuse. And the Mets right now have a full depth chart in their rotation. They have 6 guys who are currently healthy, ready to go for the start of the season. We'll see if they all make it through camp. And you have an alternate in Tobias Myers, who's getting stretched out, expected to be part of the bullpen, but could slide into the rotation. So right now, Jonah Tong at best is 7th on the depth chart. And so there is a world where we could see him. Actually, at best, he's 8th on the depth chart when it comes to an opening day rotation. So right now, it's not about, all right, go out there and try to put up 3 zeros. It's about developing as a pitcher. And we saw that with the use of this cutter. And we also saw how that cutter can really help him. And it began with the first batter that we saw of the day. And that was J.J. Weatherholt, who's one of the top prospects in all of baseball. He is the Cardinals' top prospect. Now, Weatherholt looks at a couple fastballs outside of the zone. So he's sitting 2-0. What's he thinking? He's thinking he might get another fastball. And so Jonah Tong instead throws him a cutter. Now, J.J. Weatherholt is a left-handed batter. He sees what he thinks is a fastball that's starting on the outer half of the plate, and he's gearing up to swing, and all of a sudden, that pitch takes a hard left turn and breaks on him and breaks into his hands, and you see J.J. Weatherholt start to swing and hold back and recoil. Oh, he didn't expect to see that. Next pitch, fastball. Both the cutter and the fastball are pretty much right down the middle, but that little change of pace allowed Weatherholt to be off of the fastball, so when he did get his fastball to hit, he ends up hitting more of a lazy fly ball. Jonah Tong gets an out. Now, in that first inning, Jonah Tong threw 4 cutters. All of them were in the strike zone. So it's a good thing to see that here's another pitch he can throw. It was sitting 91. He touched 93 with the cutter, and he can throw that pitch for a strike. Now, command of that pitch, that still needs to be refined. But you can see how this can be a weapon that can really help him. Because for a right-handed batter, we saw him a couple times start that pitch on the inner half, either, starting at the batter's hip, or maybe not quite that much of a break, but maybe just inside of that and breaking it over the plate. If he can dial the command of that cutter, where it could be a pitch that a hitter thinks, okay, that's a ball inside, this is a fastball in that I'm not going to swing at, it could just break it over the plate, that's huge. Or against lefties, we saw him trying to use it backdoor as steal strikes. So just having another pitch that you can throw in the strike zone other than the four-seam fastball and the changeup, that's a huge difference maker for Jonah Tong. And he had 2 really good innings where he was going to that cutter a lot and getting outs with it. Now, he goes back out for the 3rd inning, and he looked gassed. He really did. Gives up a leadoff single on the cutter, issues a walk. Then he falls behind 2-1. And again, he goes to the well in the cutter, starts at middle. It breaks to the outer corner against a right-handed batter. He gets a fly out. So again, it's just another pitch that he can throw in zone and get outs. I talked about the cutter actually with Jonah Tong. I believe, I don't remember when it was, recently. I know I compared what a cutter could do for Jonah Tong to what a cutter does for Kodai Senga. Where Kodai Senga, obviously, the bread and butter is the ghost fork, and it's trying to set up that pitch. And when his fastball is on, I mean, that's really what Kodai Senga wants to do, is work that fastball up in the zone and then have that ghost fork. But we also see sometimes when he doesn't have the fastball, he'll just go to the cutter, and he'll use that cutter to attack the zone still and get guys to hit ground balls. That's what Jonah Tong should be looking to do here. It's to miss barrels. Guys are expecting a fastball, and instead they get a cutter, and they're going to end up swinging over it a little bit and hitting that ball into the ground. Or, maybe it makes them think cutter, and they get a fastball, and they hit a lazy fly ball. So I think this really is a huge development for him, but what he's going to have to hone in is when to use the pitch and how much to use the pitch. Because Jonah Tong's day ended on a cutter that was hit over the fence, and it was in an at-bat where he threw that cutter 3 out of 4 times. And on the 4th pitch of the at-bat, he throws a cutter low and in on a lefty and Nolan Gorman. Not the worst location, but now that the dugout has been probably looking at their little iPad throughout the first couple innings and seeing, oh, he's throwing this cutter. Now hitters are known to think about it, and Nolan Gorman able to crush one, hits it 386 feet to left center field, and shows that that's a pitch that batters can do damage on. So it's not that this cutter is, it's not like we're looking at a pitch in the cutter that you saw the highlights and you were like, oh man, that pitch is an absolute weapon. I don't know if I would describe it quite as a weapon yet, but it's a tool. And if used properly, it can sharpen his other weapons. That's what this pitch should be about. It's not about the cutter suddenly becoming a primary offering for Jonah Tong. It's about the element of having a cutter making his fastball that much more dangerous, making his changeup that much more dangerous, putting more thought into a hitter's mind. You're playing more of a game of chess where these guys have to think about something other than, all right, fastball, changeup, that's it. And also, then you're also thinking about only 2 different breaks of pitches that where it's like, all right, you're thinking about a fastball that's just going to give you that ride up in the zone, and then you're thinking about that changeup that for a left-handed batter might fade low and away, and for a right-handed batter might fade into you. Now you have something that breaks the other direction, and you're also playing the difference in speed too, right? Where now you got a pitch that's just a tick slower than the 4-seam that can again be a change of pace. We'll see if he is able to find a slider that works with this cutter, where you get a pitch that has a little more break to it, a little bit of a difference in the velocity. and maybe that makes him that much better. Or if he just sticks with this as a pitch to work off the fastball, and then you have the complete change of pace, which is the 12-6 curveball that he can still drop in there. Hopefully, he can learn to throw it for strikes. I think that's a really good pitch to just really get a hitter flat-footed where they're not expecting it, and he just dumps it in the zone. But it's also a pitch that you can bury and hopefully, get a swing and miss. So this is just the evolution of Jonah Tong. I want to continue to spend more time on that evolution and what it could look like for the upcoming season. So we're going to go through all of that here in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. MLB opening day is almost here. You can feel it. Fresh starts, big expectations, and that first crack of the bat, whether it's a breakout rookie or a division race that goes down to the wire, there's nothing like being in the ballpark for a game. The only problem, getting tickets can feel like a grind. Long queues, surprise fees, prices that jump at checkout. That's where Game Time comes into play. The Game Time app is going to give fans the advantage with constant innovation. It's how you unlock amazing tickets and experiences in just a few taps. It's simple to use. The Game Time guarantee means you're going to get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. And the best part, fees are included in the price you see. So when you see that price, that's what you're going to pay. You're not going to be shocked at checkout with some fees that are going to jump out at you, and the price of your tickets are just going to skyrocket. It's all baked in when you're looking for your tickets. And also, you can view your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Download the Game Time app and create an account. Use the code LOCKED ON. You're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKED ON. That's LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 16,000 subscribers by opening day. When we look at the usage of Jonah Tong's cutter, I would not expect him to replicate what he did on Wednesday once he gets in season, because he threw that pitch 36% of the time. Again, 18 out of 50 pitches were the cutter, 23 were fastballs. So right there, you're looking at 41 of 50 pitches that were coming in at 91 to 95 miles per hour and not having much off speed mixed in. Now, last year, there were starts where Jonah Tong in the minor leagues would go to his fastball 60, 70% of the time. And there was some starts where he could just throw his fastball all day. And he was on, he had it dialed. His command of the pitch was great. Nobody was catching up to it. So that's still something you don't want Jonah Tong to get away from. The one thing that can happen with guys, and I think we've seen this with Tyler McGill across his career, is sometimes he'll fall in love with a new toy and get away from, his bread and butter. And you don't want to see that. So for Jonah Tong, you don't want to see him getting away from his fastball. You don't want to see him getting away from his changeup, because his changeup last year turned into a really good pitch. And if you look at the breakdown, last year in 5 big league starts, it was 57.4% fastball usage, 27.5% changeup. And I believe he threw the changeup a little bit more in the big leagues than it did in the minors. I think the fastball usage in the minors is a little bit higher, but that split of 83% of his pitches last year were either fastball or changeup in the big leagues. He was close to that in the minors. I think even at times he was even verging more on 90% with those two pitches. What an additional offering like a cutter can do for him is it just gives the hitter more to think about, and it gives him more weapons to attack the weaknesses of the lineups that he's facing. And as the league adjusts, you don't want to be predictable. And I think the problem with Jonah Tong is what worked in the minor leagues was too predictable for big league lineups. And so they were able to sit on that fastball and say, beat us with something else. And he didn't have anything else to really beat them. What you want to do is you want to have a couple of other pitches you can go to that gets them off that fastball, but it doesn't mean you get off that fastball. It means you're changing up your usage. You're changing up when you're throwing the fastball. In some fastball counts, well, now you have another pitch you can go to where if they're sitting fastball, it's a cutter. Again, they might hit a ground ball. They might, get surprised by it like JJ Weatherholt did and they take and you steal a strike. There's a lot of ways that pitch can be used, but it can't be a pitch, or I don't think it could be a pitch that he goes to the well with 30% of the time, maybe not even 25% of the time. If I was to script out his usage in a very just rudimentary way of just looking at all of his pitches and saying, okay, let's create the pie chart. He's got to throw that four seam at least 50% of the time still. I would say at least that much. That's where we're going to start. That changeup last year looked like a plus pitch. So I still want him throwing that about a quarter of the time. Now, there's going to be starts where it's not on and you go to a cutter or a slider or a curveball more, or you just uptick the four seam if it's working for you that day. And there's going to be some starts where the changeup is dialed and you're throwing it even more. So there's that give and take that's going to happen naturally. But over the course of a season, if it's 50% four seam usage, 25% changeup, it can be just 15% cutter and 10% curveball and maybe the slider, like the combination of his breaking balls. But just having that third offering that he's always going to, that he, when I say always going to, I mean in every start you're going to see it, because there could be times where Jonah Tong might not throw a curveball in a start, and that's okay. You just need to have another weapon, and that's what this could be. It's another tool in the kit that can help you turn a lineup over multiple times. And it's going to take some time to refine it. That's where Jonah Tong has his work cut out for him. He's got a lot to do. He's got a lot of developing that still needs to be done in the minor leagues to be ready to truly dominate in the big leagues the way that we think he can. So when we look at what his season will be, I don't know how much time Jonah Tong spends in the big leagues this year, especially early in the season. I think you can make a case that early in the season starts, if they aren't going to the six guys that are projected to be in the rotation or Tobias Myers, I almost wonder who's more ready to make starts in May. I'm not going to say April, because I think April makes it a little bit tough for Christian Scott, who needs that extended spring. I think he might need, a little bit longer time to get fully ramped up. But once he's ramped up, if these guys are both, once you get to May 1st, completely, geared up, they're in full season mode, they're throwing 90 pitches in each outing, who is more ready to face big league hitters and turn lineups over? And I think it might be Christian Scott. Now, I still think Jonah Tong has a higher ceiling, but I think for Christian Scott, it's more a matter of, okay, can he get his feet under him? Can he get right after all the time off? He needs to face competition and face lineups, and he'll need that time in Syracuse to be ready. But Jonah Tong, I mean, there's real development that still needs to be done, and not in a bad way. It's just you want this guy to be the absolute best version of himself. I think the best version has a pitch like a cutter that he can go to with regularity and find success. And it's just a matter then of trying to fine-tune the usage, when that pitch needs to be deployed, and how often that pitch should be deployed. So we'll see how it all works out for Jonah Tong. I still expect him to find plenty of success in Syracuse. I expect him to play a big role at some point this season, whether it be at the tail end of the year, if the Mets are just looking to add some weapons to their bullpen, and Jonah Tong can be that guy, or if there's pockets of the season where they need him to slide into the rotation. Last year, the combination of Frankie Montas, Jonah Tong, Paul Blackburn, Brandon Sproat, Blade Tidwell, Brandon Waddell, and Justin Hagenman made 24 starts collectively. And that's because the Mets only had Clay Holmes and David Peterson, who got over 30 starts. Senga got over 20. You had Canning and McGill, who were in the teens. And then you had a lot of different guys that mixed into the rotation. Sean Manaea got a fair amount of outings as well in the second half. But when you look at the seventh man in your depth chart for your rotation, or the sixth man, well, actually, seventh or eighth. Geez, I keep getting confused here. They have six guys in the rotation right now. When you look at someone that is either seventh or eighth, depending on Tobias Myers' role, And Jonah Tong is maybe the first guy in Syracuse. He's the ace of the Syracuse Mets that could come up at any time. How many starts do you project that guy to make in a given season? It all depends on the health of the guys that are on the depth chart above him and their performance. You look at the projection models, they have no idea what to do with Jonah Tong. They have him at 12 to 13 games, only 3 to 5 starts, 25 to 32 innings, an ERA between 3.4 and 4.07. I can't take much from what the projection models are saying about Jonah Tong. I do know that last year in 22 starts in the minor leagues, he pitched to a 1.43 ERA. That was across 113 and 2/3 innings pitched, about 5 innings per start. When I projected Kodai Senga's season, I had him at 20 starts. So for Jonah Tong, I'm going to give him the other 12 for that spot in the rotation. And I'm going to say my projection or my prediction for how many starts Jonah Tong makes this year, I'm going to put that number at 12. And I'd be curious in the comment section, would you guys take the under or the over? Do you think he makes more than 12 starts or less than 12 starts this year? I could go either way with that. I feel like at most we see 15, and I think we'll at least see 7 or 8. So that's where I ended up at 12, right in the middle. With that, I think he's going to pitch about 60 innings. I think he strikes out 77. How I came to that is I put his strikeout per 9 at about 11.5, and I extrapolated that out over 60 innings. ERA, 2.85 is what I had. Now, that's bold. The way I'm envisioning this season for Jonah Tong, I'm envisioning Jonah Tong spending the first 3 months of the year in Syracuse. Maybe he gets a couple spot starts. I could see that for certain. Where he comes up, Mets need an arm, you send him back down. You have that ability. As soon as you option him, because he's on the 40-man roster, as soon as you option him as part of your spring cuts, it becomes an option year. As soon as he spends 20 days in the minor leagues, you're going to burn an option. That's fine. That's to be expected. You have 5 options. So you can send him up and down 5 times. The first one is when you don't have him make camp or break camp. And then you still have 4 more chances to call him up and down throughout the season. So you can see him make a few spot starts for sure. Just like you can see that with Christian Scott. Jack Wenninger has to be added to the roster. So that's where he's a little bit further down the depth chart just because the Mets might not want to put him on the 40 just yet. I don't even know if Jack Wenninger is Rule 5 draft eligible. Let's look that up real quick. That does factor into these things because if he is Rule 5 draft eligible, he is. He is. So I do think they will add to the roster at some point, and he could absolutely be getting some spot starts. But I just think you'll see Tong make a couple spot starts, and I think post-trade deadline, Jonah Tong might find himself in the Mets rotation down the stretch. And I think he's going to have a lot of success because I think at that point in time, he'll have figured some things out. He'll have figured out when to use that cutter. Maybe he'll have refined the curveball a little bit more. And I just would expect that he's a more complete pitcher the next time we see him having that extended run in the big leagues to the point where I think he's going to dominate. And so that's why I put that bold of a projection out there because it's a prediction more than a projection. I don't have any models. But I just think that Jonah Tong is a guy I'm going to buy a lot of stock in right now. And I feel like he really needs this time in AAA to refine his arsenal. And once he does, watch out. In the final segment today, we're going to talk about Carson Benge. He had a great game on Wednesday, showcase what he can do. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now it's time to take it up a level. Go ad free. Join the Everydayer Club, and you're going to get Locked On Mets without the interruptions. You get access to our Discord. We can chat to the Mets fans. Then you get access to a merch shop. If you want to be part of the Everydayer Club, you can find a link in the episode description, or you can go to lockedonmets.supercast.com. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Carson Benge. He had himself one heck of a game on Wednesday, goes 3 for 3 with 3 singles. His first at bat, coming out of the leadoff spot in front of Juan Soto, he squares off against Richard Fitts, and Richard Fitts was throwing gas, and Carson Benge was late on those fastballs. So he looked at a first pitch fastball for a ball, then swung through 2 at 97 miles per hour. And again, he was absolutely behind on those pitches. He, took a pitch in the dirt on a sinker, and then Richard Fitts goes right back upstairs at 98 miles per hour. But Carson Benge hits a chopper and gets on base for an infield single. He said after the game that he hates to strike out, and that can be pretty clear if you look at a strikeout rate last year of 17.7%. And his strikeout rate was a shade below 16% in Double-A, which is where he had his most success last season. So clearly he wants to put the ball in play. And what you see from Carson Benge, it's the barrel control, his ability to make contact and put the ball in play, and really to spray line drives. And we saw that in the second at bat. He gets ahead in the count, 1-0, fouls off 2 pitches, so he's behind now, 1-2. Gets a fastball up and away, goes with it, rips a line drive at 101 miles per hour into left field for a base hit. Carson Benge is just a really sound hitter. And you saw his fight throughout this game because he was behind in every at-bat, and he just kept on finding his way on base. The final at-bat was the most impressive. He leads off the 5th inning and looks at ball 1. Then he fouls off 2 pitches. He then looks at ball 2, a cutter off the plate to even up the count. And then he fouls off 4 pitches in a row, has an easy take on a sinker that nearly hits him, has to get out of the way of it. And then he rifles the 10th pitch of the at-bat into the outfield for his 3rd single of the day. It's just that barrel control for Carson Benge. I want to show this last at-bat for those of you who are watching on YouTube, and I'll explain what they're seeing for our audio audience. You look at the pitches that he saw in this 10-pitch at-bat. First pitch, way up in the zone, easy take. Second pitch, fastball, inner half, fouls it off. Third pitch, fastball in his batter's box. Again, fouled it off. The ability to, again, put bat on ball no matter where it's thrown is pretty impressive. Fourth pitch in the other batter's box, easy take. Fifth pitch, you're looking at a cutter that's low and away, gets a bat on it. Seventh pitch, a cutter that nearly hits home plate if you're looking at where it came across. It's very low, gets a bat on it. Eighth pitch, cutter in the zone, gets a bat on it. Ninth pitch again in his batter's box before he was able to finally put one in play and get a base hit. It's just really impressive what this guy can do. And the more that he continues to refine his approach, the more that he is able to get into advantageous hitter counts, you're going to be able to see him, drive the ball a little bit more and hit for extra bases. But what I've talked about this week, as we've discussed this competition in right field, if he's competing in at-bats like we saw him competing at bats today, when you combine that ability to give you a good at-bat with what he brings to your outfield defensively, it's going to be really hard to start him in Syracuse because he's just a good player that helps you win games. And in this one, yes, the Mets lost 6-0 in spring training. Who cares? In his 3 at-bats, he saw 19 pitches. Now, 10 of them came in the final at-bat. But also 10 of those 19 pitches that he saw came with 2 strikes, and he found a lot of pitches off to hang in there. So I just think that Carson Benge really was impressive in this game. Results are always going to draw a little more attention, a little more buzz. So Carson Benge starts off whatever was 0 for 4. People are already, raising an eyebrow and saying, okay, Mike Tauchman might be the guy. Then he goes 3 for 3, and everyone's probably going to be saying Carson Benge should be the Mets starting right fielder. We have to see what it looks like. And for me, it's not about how many 3 for 3 games he has in spring training. It's about the at-bats that we saw in this game. The ability to foul off and waste pitches and hang in there. When you are behind the count, to not chase and to extend at-bats and give yourself a chance. Even if a 10-pitch battle ends in a strikeout, it's not the worst thing when you are going through the war of attrition that is a baseball game. That can still help your ball club. But the ability to be behind in the count, not catching up to fastballs, and to chop one and use your speed and get a base hit. The ability to hang into it at bat for 10 pitches and then finally find a hole in the infield and hit a ground ball there and get on base. These are the skills that Carson Benge showcased in this game. These are the skills that we saw throughout the minor league season last year. And if he is able to do that, if he is comfortable facing big league competition and he's getting at bats late in spring and still giving you good at bats, again, it will be very hard for the New York Mets to send him down to Syracuse when, as we talked about a couple days ago, there's a lot that they stand to gain by opening him out as part of the big league team to start the year. It helps with the prospect promotion incentive. But I also think for a guy like this, it helps with his development. If he's going to take some lumps, let him take those lumps in April and May, because he might be hitting his stride in June and you might get a difference maker in the second half. If he doesn't get up until June and that's when he takes his lumps, you might get to a point where you can't ride the wave of a young player because it's winning time at the end of the season and you might have to go to the veterans. So we'll see. We'll see what the camp looks like. But my biggest takeaway, again, if his at-bats look like they did on Wednesday throughout the next 4 weeks, he's going to make this team. He is. Anyway, that's going to be all for this edition of Locked On Mets. We're not going to do one more thing today because I think I covered it with Jonah Tong and Carson Benge. They were the two main storylines of the day. So that will be all for this edition of Locked On Mets. On tomorrow's show, we'll see what spring training brings us. If there's anything else to discuss, Nolan McLean is going to make a start, so that'll be a lot of fun to see what he has in store and what will probably be his only Grapefruit League start, or at least his only one prior to the World Baseball Classic. Freddie Peralta's going on Friday, so a lot of fun stuff to close out the week here. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever your podcast. Subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network.